The Many Adventures of Iron Dad and Spider-Son by LBIGreyhound13. Chapter 4, Weekend with Iron Man, Part 1, Friday. Boarding the plane now? You sure you have everything? Yep, all my stuff is in my locker. Great, now remember, you can call me if you need anything. I know, May, don't worry. Mr. Stark and I will be just fine. I know you will be. Ha ha, come on. I know you wouldn't let me stay over if you didn't trust him. Don't tell him that, it might boost his ego. Lol, promise, I love you, have a safe trip. Text me when you land, okay? Will do, love you too. I'll call later tonight. As soon as May texted her last message, Peter jolted out of his thoughts when he heard the dismissal bell ring. And as soon as the teacher dismissed the last class of the day, Peter practically burst out of his seat with his books, and Ned following close behind. May take off yet? Ned asked as he and Peter walked towards their lockers. Not yet, she's boarding right now, Peter replied. May was boarding on a plane to Florida to attend a work convention, and it was her first time leaving Peter home since before Ben died. She used to go on these conventions once per year, and, of course, he and his uncle got to spend the weekend together. However, times had changed. After Ned had revealed that he was seeing family this weekend, and a mention to Tony, Peter was now going to spend the weekend with Iron Man himself. I can't believe the weekend you're spending time with Mr. Stark falls on the exact weekend I visit family, Ned complained as he opened his locker. The rookie superhero chuckled. Oh, don't worry, you won't miss much. He said, it's not like I'm helping Mr. Stark with some upgrades. And he's going to be upgrading my suit. Oh, and we might go patrolling together over the weekend. Nothing major. Dude, you're killing me, Ned groaned. Peter laughed as he reached into his locker and took out his duffel bag, throwing it over his shoulder with his backpack. Relax, Ned, he said as he and his best friend walked towards the front of the school. Tell you what, I can talk to Mr. Stark about letting you come over. He's already said he wants to meet the guy who hacked his SUIT. Wait, seriously? Ned exclaimed. Hell yeah, dude, Peter said, smiling. Awesome! Peter couldn't help but laugh again as his phone buzzed. So he took the phone out of his pocket and saw that there was a message from Happy. Hey kid, I'm outside. Ready when you are. Oh, Happy's here, he said to Ned as he typed a reply to Tony's head of security. Gotta get going. Okay, see you on Monday, man, Ned replied as he shared a fist bump with Peter. Have fun this weekend. You too, dude, Peter said before walking towards the front door. Peter walked down the stairs of the school, saying goodbye to his classmates along the way, and made his way around the corner of the school. This was slowly becoming a habit for Peter and Happy. Yes, people were aware of Peter's internship at Stark Industries, but Peter, Tony, May and Pepper agreed that it was best to keep it on as low a profile as much as possible. Not only would it lead to somebody finding out Peter was Spider-Man, but Peter was a minor and nowhere near ready to deal with the press daunting on him or looking to him for dirt on Tony. Plus, it could potentially lead to rumours and invasion of privacy for Peter and May, something Tony and May did not want. So Peter and Happy agreed that the head of security would be as discreet as possible when picking the former up from the school. Soon enough, Peter rounded a corner and found a familiar black Audi waiting on the side of the street. He smiled to himself as he practically ran over to the car. He tapped on the trunk of the car, and sure enough, it opened up, allowing Peter to place his backpack and duffel bag in the truck and close it. Then he moved to the passenger side, opening the door. Hey, Happy, he said as he climbed in. Thanks for picking me up. No problem, kid, Happy replied, giving Peter a small smile. How was school today? Pretty good, Peter replied as he buckled himself in. Can't wait for break next week, though. It's like the teachers are just piling on us to make us miserable. Happy chuckled. Ever since Peter had managed to defeat the Vulture, Adrian Toombs at Coney Island, Happy had grown more fond of the kid, especially when he and Pepper saw how much fun Peter and Tony had together. Everything seemed to immediately click between them, and it was nice to see Tony bond with someone who admired him as a person and respected him. He could see Tony wanting to be a better person because of this kid. The old Tony would never have wanted anything to do with that, let alone offer to let a kid stay over at his home for an entire weekend, or take a picture with him. "Did Mr. Stark say anything to you about what he has planned for the weekend?" Peter asked as they made their way toward the tower. "I've asked him all week, and he won't tell me." "Not a clue," Happy replied. He only laughed when he heard Peter let out an exasperated groan. "Welcome, Peter," Friday said as he stepped into the elevator. "Boss would like me to inform you that he is wrapping up a meeting with Miss Potts, and that he will meet you in the penthouse shortly." "Oh, okay. Thanks, Friday," Peter said as he leaned his back against the wall. He wasn't upset. He always knew that Tony was a busy man. Tony was no longer CEO of Stark Industries, as he gave it to Pepper years ago, but it was still easy to forget that he was still needed for business matters. Then again, perhaps that was a good thing. The company used to belong to Tony's father. It only made sense. The thought of Howard Stark made Peter realize that Tony had never fully mentioned his father, except for one time before, and after the ferry incident 2 months ago. "My dad never really supported me. I'm just trying to break that cycle of shame." God, I sound like my dad. What was Tony's relationship with his father like? From what Peter had heard, it wasn't that great. He was suddenly jolted out of his thoughts when the elevator dinged and the doors opened. "Welcome to the penthouse, Peter," Friday announced, allowing Peter to walk off. "Boss said for you to make yourself at home, and he will give you a tour as soon as he comes up." "Wow," Peter said as he walked off the elevator and into the hall. "This is the penthouse?" "Correct, Peter," Friday replied, not aware of the rhetorical question. Peter looked around, taking everything in as he scanned the penthouse. There was a kitchen and a large living area, and a hallway that went towards what Peter assumed to be the bedrooms. Not having Tony around somewhat made him feel a little awkward. Yes, he was a guest, but he didn't like the idea of being in Tony Stark's home without the man himself. With that in mind, Peter decided to simply sit on the couch and start to get some homework done while he waited for his mentor. So he took his backpack and duffel bag, placing them next to the couch, and then he took out his computer to work on an essay he had due next week before the break. It was then, out of the corner of his eye, that he saw a picture frame sitting on the end table. At first glance, he thought it was Pepper. But it was actually another woman, with hair pulled back in a tight bun, smiling as she played a piano. Curiosity got the better of him, as he slowly picked up the picture, studying the woman. It didn't take him long to see that it was Tony's mother, Maria Stark. Peter remembered hearing a lot about Howard Stark most of the time, and Tony's mother was talked about from time to time. The teen couldn't help but notice the strong resemblance between Tony and his mother. "What are you looking at?" a whisper said. Peter screamed as he jolted, trying not to drop the picture of Tony's mother, and turned around to see Tony standing behind the couch, chuckling. I'm so sorry, Mr. Stark," Peter said, immediately standing up and putting the picture back on the table. "I didn't mean to snoop. I was just—" "Kid, relax," Tony said, holding his hands up to calm him down. "I was just messing with you. If I didn't want you to see it, I wouldn't have left it there." Peter widened his brown eyes and blushed. "Oh," he simply replied. "Yeah, I guess that makes sense." Tony smiled and then looked at the picture. "That's my mum," he said. "She used to play the piano all the time back in the day. She even taught me how to play." Peter looked up at his mentor with widened eyes. "You play piano?" "Used to, but after taking over Stark Industries, I hadn't really had the chance to take up the skill." "You played an instrument, right? I mean, you used to take band practice, right?" Yeah, I did," Peter replied as he walked around the couch up to Tony. "I used to play the piano too, and sometimes the clarinet." "Wow, 2 instruments! You really are a genius." Peter smiled and blushed even more at Tony's compliment. "Thanks, Mr. Stark," he said. "Hey, why don't I give you the tour and show you to the guest room? We can put your stuff down and then tinker in the lab." "Sounds great." He picked up his backpack and duffel bag. "Okay," Tony said as he took Peter's duffel bag over his shoulder.
So you've seen the living room and the kitchen.
He led Peter down the hallway.
Over here are the bathrooms.
He pointed to one on the left side of the hallway.
This one is mine, and
he then pointed to the door on the other side.
This is the guest room. This is where you'll be sleeping.
The billionaire opened the door, allowing Peter to see the room. Peter's eyes widened as he stepped in and surveyed the room. And the room consisted of a queen-sized bed in the corner of the room, a nightstand, glass double doors leading to a balcony, a dresser, a closet, a desk, and a door leading to a bathroom. "Wow," Peter said as he walked in. "This is great, sir. Thank you."
"Don't mention it, kid,"
Tony said, patting him on the shoulder.
"You need a place to stay, and I think this weekend would be good for us."
The teen smiled. Ever since Tony took him to Germany 6 months ago, Peter had wanted nothing more than to be a part of Tony's life. Tony understood him and why he was a hero. Like him, Tony had dealt with a lot between running his company, dealing with the reputation of a playboy, and being kidnapped in Afghanistan. Even though he wasn't sure if Tony knew everything, Peter figured that Tony had some idea as to the fact that Peter had had his own demons, which was what drove him to be a hero. "I think so too, Mr. Stark," the teen replied.
"Now, what do you say we head down and tinker in the lab?"
Tony asked after a moment.
"You can grab your suit, and I can change out of this monkey suit." "All right, Peter,"
Tony said as he and Peter put the finishing touches on his web shooters.
"We're just about ready to test these new bad boys."
"Got it, Mr. Stark," Peter said as he closed them up and placed them on his wrists. "These taser webs were a great idea."
"Of course, I'm a genius billionaire," Tony replied, "with a genius intern."
Peter couldn't help but blush at his mentor's compliment. "All right, ready when you are." Peter stepped out into the middle of the test area of the lab as Tony stood behind him.
"Dummy, you and Friday are all on standby," he said, watching his intern prep his web shooter.
"What could go wrong with a taser web shooter?" Peter asked with a smug on his face.
"Famous last words, kid," Tony simply replied.
Peter chuckled and rolled his eyes, extending his arm. With the press of a button, a web was fired and landed on the test dummy. It wasn't a real person, so if it weren't for the burst of electricity, they wouldn't have known it would work. "Oh, we did it!" Peter shouted. "It worked!" Tony laughed as he gave Peter a high five.
"Nice job, kid."
"I can't wait to try these out on patrol," the teen said.
"Now, remember, this should be used when things get hairy. The last thing you need is running out of webs when you really need it."
"Right, I need to work on that too. I should increase storage capacity too."
"Friday, what time is it?"
"It's 6:30, boss,"
Friday replied. "You and Peter have been working for about 3 hours. Well, I don't know about you, Peter," Tony asked his mentee, "but I'm getting pretty hungry."
"Oh, yeah, I could eat," Peter replied a little too quickly, making him blush yet again. It was pretty clear that it was his metabolism talking. Tony obviously saw this and gave the teen a gentle smile.
"Don't worry, buddy. I'll make sure you're fed,"
he said as he wrapped an arm around Peter and guiding him out of the lab.
"We can order some pizza."
"Sweet," Tony said, smiling at his mentor.
"Nothing better than New York pizza,"
Tony said, leaning back in his seat at a table in the kitchen. "Truer words have never been spoken, Mr. Stark," Peter replied, wiping his mouth with his napkin. "What was the pizza like in California?"
"You've never been to California?"
Peter shook his head. "May and Ben took me on trips to Disneyland in Florida, the Jersey Shore, Coney Island, and Hershey Park," he said, crossing his arms and leaning back in his seat.
"I'm sure that was fun,"
Tony said with a small smile. "Oh yeah, definitely," Peter said, nodding. "I remember this one time we went to Disney. We went to the Magic Kingdom, and I was 8. We stayed in the park late to watch the fireworks show. I was too short, so Ben picked me up and put me on his shoulders, so that I could see them better." The teen suddenly trailed off at the memory, allowing a look of nostalgia and sadness to cross over his face. Tony noticed this and leaned forward.
"Your uncle sounds like a great man,"
he said quietly. The mentee chuckled. "Yeah, he was. One of the best." he said. He and May. My parents died when I was only 4, so my aunt and uncle had always been there. You know? The 3 of us were basically a team. But don't get me wrong, May and I are still a team. But when Uncle Ben died, it felt like something was
missing,
they both said in unison. Both the veteran and the rookie stared at each other suddenly, completely shocked at what had just occurred. Yeah, missing, Peter said after a minute of silence. What? How?
I felt the same way when my parents died, Tony explained. Mostly my mum. And when my butler, Jarvis, died years ago. He was like a father to me too. There's just this void, and it feels so wrong.
Yeah. When Peter thought about it, he realised both he and Tony had lost 3 important people in their lifetimes. Even though he wasn't sure what had occurred between Tony and his father, Howard Stark was still his father, a family member. A moment of silence passed over them again as they sat at the table, and neither of them knew exactly what was happening. But perhaps it was their connection, bond, friendship, growing stronger. But suddenly the moment was interrupted when Tony stood, picking up his plates.
Well, I say we clean up, head back down to the lab and tinker some more, he said. Spider-Man can take Friday night off. Maybe we can do another Iron Man Spider-Man team-up tomorrow night, yeah?
Peter smiled and nodded. Hey, May, Peter said as he picked up his cell phone, stepping out of the lab. Hey, sweetie, May replied over the phone. I didn't think you were going to answer. Aren't you patrolling tonight? I was going to, Peter replied, but Mr. Stark and I decided to do some more upgrades on our suits and would just patrol tomorrow night. Really? That sounds like fun, May said with what sounded like a smile. Speaking of Mr. Stark, how's that going? It's been great, Aunt May, Peter replied excitedly. He's been so nice and really made me feel just talking and working on superhero stuff. We ordered some pizza and talked about some stuff. You know, I told him about Ben. He even told me a little about his parents and Jarvis.
Wow, really?
Yeah, but I mean, we kind of changed the subject after that. He scratched the back of his neck. I hope he doesn't think I overstepped or something. I wasn't trying to pry or anything, or... Baby, relax. I'm sure that's not what he thought. He probably just didn't want to bog you down with such a heavy topic. You know, sometimes when we talk about Ben, it still hurts. And I'm sure he understands that. Yeah, Peter said, as he turned around to see Tony still working at his desk with his back turned to him. You might be right. If there was one specific thing Peter loved about his aunt, it was that she had an amazing tendency to read people. Tony didn't seem like he was upset at all about their conversation. He seemed to let the moment sink in and gave them a chance to stray away from a sore topic. That's all. Don't overthink it, Peter, May said. Just try and enjoy the weekend and get to know him. Let him get to know you, okay? Okay, thanks, May, he said. Oh, hey, how's your convention going? End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I like that one a lot. That was very sweet. Them just being there for each other, you know? Having each other's backs in every way. I love that. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.